Hello to all our dear students. Welcome to the Bajirao IS Academy. Today is 6th December and we are going to discuss the daily Hindu newspaper analysis. So in today's session, we have to discuss three important editorial. Number one is related to paradox of major world economy. Here we will understand that despite the major emitter of greenhouse gas, they are trying to promote renewable energy, but they have a paradox in their decision making. What's the paradox? We will understand. And we will move to the next article, and it is related to plastic free world. Although we want plastic free world, but we doesn't act, and it is getting reflected in the recent conference which was being held in Nairobi, Kenya. And here the consensus for the plastic free world was not met. So, what were the blockade? We will understand. And further, we will shift to the last article where we will understand the Ambedkar approach, P.R. Ambedkar approach towards the improvement, towards the welfare for the marginalized and the weaker section. Because in the neo-liberal economic world order, what we are seeing that intervention of the government is reducing and intervention of the market is increasing. That means capitalism, and because of that there is a higher chances that exploitation of these marginalized people may occur. And not only the exploitation, there can be the chances that their share in the workforce, in the decision making, in the businesses might not get up to the mark. Okay, so all these articles are very important. So if you are liking our initiative, please do like, share, subscribe, and also share with your friend circle. Now we are shifting to the editorial discussion. The first article you can relate with the paper GS3. Okay, so when they talk about the recent conference which is being held as well, that is the COP28. Tell me the location, although it is written here. So what is the aim of this meeting? Well, you know that there is a aim to limit the global temperature rise by 1.5 degree Celsius. Okay, but we have this target, but this target is facing challenge in terms of, like, already we have breached our target of 1 degree Celsius rise. That means only we have 0.5 degrees Celsius in control to limit ourselves to the rise of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Okay, so one challenge is that, and another challenge is, like, we on yearly basis debate and discuss on various international platforms like COP, Conference of Party, but when it comes to the solution, when it comes to the agreement, the country disagrees on various provision. Okay, and the third challenge is, like, we want to promote renewable energy. Okay, but we on the other side also focuses on the fossil fuel. So fossil fuel and renewable energy cannot go together. And if we are promoting the fossil fuel, or we are not eliminating the fossil fuel, the target of limiting the rise of the global temperature will not be achieved. Okay, so we know the solution, but we do not act. We act slowly. Okay, like, we need to promote renewable energy and we need to reduce the dependency on the fossil fuel. Okay, and for promoting renewables to achieve our target, there is a very high stake involved. Like, the current scenario of the global temperature rise requires 3 times more renewable energy capacity by 2030, because we are already nearer to breach the target. Hence, to ensure that target is not breached, we need to enhance our aggressiveness in dealing with in promoting the renewables. Okay, and also the recent G20 summit, which was a very successful summit under the aegis of India. Okay, so in this summit there was also the commitment to promote renewable energy. And in this recent conference COP28, there was a like talks to agree on the global renewable energy efficiency pledge. It was proposed in this summit. But here some of the country, including India and China, opposed. Now you have to understand why these nations opposed. First of all, you have to understand the provision of this pledge. Okay, so this pledge wants that we should promote renewable energy. Number one, that's a good point. We should promote and we are promoting. But there is another provision here. What is the another provision? Like we have to phase down the coal power. And also in this coal sector, we have to end the investment. So that the challenge, and that's the issue why India didn't voted this pledge in favor. Because when we talk about India, so India's energy security is dependent on coal. Okay, majority of our energy production coming from coal. Okay, so despite we are responsible for greenhouse gas emission, because coal fired power plants are responsible for nearly 70% of India's greenhouse gas emission. Okay, so we do emit, but we have to also take care about energy security as well. Okay, and that's why India and even China didn't agreed on phasing down and limiting the investment in the coal sector. Okay, although India did marvelous job in promoting renewable energy, like we have a target set in the COP27 from nationally determined contribution. Okay, and tell me, what do you mean by nationally determined contribution? And here one important target was like reaching 500 gigawatt of renewable energy production in India. Okay, and currently we have 170 gigawatt of renewable energy production. So we can triple down this data in the coming years. Okay, and also we know that to deal with the climate change and the greenhouse gas emission reduction, okay, we need to promote the renewable energy. Okay, so hence we are in the direction, but you have to understand also the paradox of the world's major economic power like US and other western country. So why US and other country or their ally, they accepted the pledge, okay, that they will phase down the coal. Okay, so the major reason was that US and US energy is not much dependent on coal. Their energy dependent is on oil and gas. You can understand from the data that US only draws about 20% of its energy from coal and about 55% from oil and gas. And tell me, oil and gas is renewable or the fossil fuel? Yes, these are fossil fuel. And if these are fossil fuel, so on the one side you are trying to phase down and eliminate coal, but your dependency on coal is very limited. If you really want to promote renewable, then you should eliminate your dependency on oil and gas as well. Why you are too much dependent on oil and gas? Okay, so that's the scenario, and that represents the paradox of the world's major economy. Okay, so what these country are doing, like they are just shifting to other form of fossil fuel from coal, and that's why India is also have its concern that our energy security is dependent on coal, and if we are until and unless not capable of promoting that of producing that much amount of renewables that can cater our energy requirement, so how we can phase down our coal energy production. Okay, coal based energy production. Hope you understood this article. Very important article, very interesting. So now we are shifting to the second article, and the second article you can relate with also GS paper 3, and it is also related to conservation. Okay, and when we talk about this article, first of all, tell me, when plastic was introduced for the first time, it was like a marvelous opportunity for the humanity because it had numerous benefits, like you can have a footwear of plastic, you can have a appliances made of plastic, and these dimensions were explored, and now it is that much in the world that we are, our lifestyle are dependent on the plastic. Okay, but as you know that if there is huge dependency, so it can cause huge concern as well, and this is best to fit in the field of plastic pollution. Like we are too much dependent, and now this dependency is causing harm to our environment, to the human, to the air, to the soil, to the agriculture, okay, to the microorganism, to the organism. You can relate any number of the points and their impact. Okay, so what's the biggest problem of the plastic? The biggest problem is like it is non-degradable. Okay, if it was degradable, no problem, but it is non-degradable. It can remain in the soil, in the land for numerous years. Okay, and if you burn them, this will cause huge chemical emissions and greenhouse gas emission as well. Okay, so that's the biggest challenge of the plastic. And to deal with the plastic, what we have to do to end its production and also to end its consumption, because production and consumption are interrelated. Okay, and that's why we have a concern to deal with the plastic pollution, but we want to end it, but when it comes to the action, we are failure. Okay, we does not implement, we does not agree, we does not try to ensure the global consensus on ending the plastic pollution. You can take an example from this case study, like in November, intergovernmental negotiation committee, third, or you can say third intergovernmental negotiation committee was met in Nairobi, Kenya. Look the map of Kenya, okay, and the surrounding neighboring countries. Okay, so in this meeting, there was a point of discussion that how we can end the plastic pollution. Okay, and this intergovernmental negotiation committee is the outcome of United Nations Environment Assembly Resolution 5/14. Okay, and what is the responsibility of INC? The responsibility of is that they need to develop a global plastic treaty by 2025, and that's why INC 1 happened, INC 2 happened, INC 3 was happened recently in Nairobi. Okay, so why these many INCs? Because the parties, the countries that are negotiating to deal with the plastic pollution, there is disagreement and agreement. Some countries disagree to the provision, some countries agree. Okay, so negotiation takes time, but in this third negotiation as well, only some countries try to really deal with the plastic pollution, but many countries, we will see in the example, specifically the countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, China, all of these. Okay, so they have a concerns, they have a concerns regarding the provision, and that makes this zero draft text almost the dead end. Okay, so what is zero draft text we will discuss, and you understood the basics. So when we talk about zero draft text, and remember for this prelims, okay, the UPSC can ask sometimes zero draft text seems in the news. Is it related to what? It is related to dealing with the plastic pollution. Okay, so like it contains a strong options to develop international legally binding treaty to end the plastic pollution. Okay, but when we talk about other treaties objective, like they should first of all end the plastic pollution along with protecting human health, environment. But who opposed this? Some countries. We can refer here group of like-minded country like Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, Iran. Okay, so these country, they said that although the provision seems good, but please add another clause to this zero draft. What will be the clause? Like while contributing to the achievement of sustainable development. Okay, so simply this clause will enable these like-minded country to produce, trade, okay, and at the same time trying to ensure sustainable development. So they are like finding the loophole to protect their economic interest and investment, because you should understand that plastic comes from where? Plastic comes from the like crude oil, the chemicals from the crude oil. Okay, so these countries are rich in crude oil. Okay, so that's why if there will be a ban on the plastic pollution, so it needs to be banned in the plastic production as well. Okay, and plastic production ban, that means what? The ban of these chemicals or the raw materials. Okay, so that's why these countries are not trying to get agree. Okay, so what's the important point of disagreement? Number one, regarding the reduction in the production of primary polymers. Polymers is like raw materials of the plastic that comes from the hydrocarbons that comes from the like crude oil. Okay, so here some countries argued like the resolution 5/14, it calls to end the plastic pollution, not the plastic production. Remember this difference: plastic pollution plus plastic production. If we want to eliminate plastic, then production needs to be eliminated and pollution needs to be eliminated. Okay, so here the country, some country, they are not agreeing on ending the plastic production because that will cause their economy, that would cause their economic interest. Okay, so this is the concern, and hence on this matter the consensus was not occurred. And when we talk about the other issue, the issue of finance, we know that any treaty convention to get implemented in a proper way, it requires what? Finance. And if finance is not there, so the treaty will be ineffective. So when we talk about the need of finance, so from where the finance will come? There was a suggestion in this draft like imposing plastic pollution fee that will be paid by plastic polymer producer. And there was another suggestion like we will try to reduce the financial flow into the projects that cause high carbon footprint. And now you can understand about the second point, that the like-minded country which we were talking about, like Saudi Arabia, Iran, okay, or the Russia, okay, so they will not agree. Why? Because like they have the dependency on the crude oil. Okay, and their economic interest is adjusted in the crude oil. Okay, so that's why these like-minded country wanted deletion of these provisions. Okay, and now there is also disconsensus of a trade with the plastic. Like we have the Basel Convention that deals with restrictions related to the transboundary movement of hazardous waste and disposals. Okay, So Basel Convention, although contains certain chemicals, okay, but these are silent on tackling the plastic pollution, okay. And if we definitely want to tackle the plastic pollution, we should have a limit, we should have a regulation on the global plastic trade, okay. But also the like-minded countries that we have said, they also didn't agree on limiting it, because they talked about the freedom and sovereignty of the nation will be affected, okay. So they are like giving their points in against banning the plastic production, and that will definitely not lead to the plastic pollution end, okay. So the provisions is like now in the dilution mode, okay, because these countries are like rejecting some of the important provision that is needed to tackle the plastic pollution, okay. And when we talk about another issue, the issue of rules of procedure, let's say if the zero draft policy gets prepared and it wants approval, okay, so there is a need to have a consensus, but consensus based on what? Whether it requires each and every nation to accept, to sign, to ratify for the agreement to come into the reality, or whether there should be a provision of two-thirds vote majority, okay, regarding the framing of the rules of procedure, okay. So there is also not the consensus. So we can see here that some countries are stalling the initiatives towards the plastic free world, okay. And hence these are like barrier to proceed with developing the first draft. So this is the zero draft, then we will move to the first draft, but in the zero draft itself the barrier is existing, okay. And also we are seeing that here in this INC3 meeting there was huge presence of the lobbyist industry that was related to the plastic industry sector, okay. So there is huge influence of that industry as well, and hence we can say that although we make rules, but we also try to not build the consensus to come into the agreement, to come into the consensus, okay. So now we are shifting to the third tutorial, and it is related to the GS paper 1. And in simple terms, when we say that what our constitutional maker B.R. Ambedkar wanted for India to be like, so they wanted that each and every people, specifically the marginalized, the vulnerable, the Dalit section, should have its role, should have its presence in, whether it is the politics, whether it is in the education sector, whether it is in the entrepreneurship, that means holistic development. But when we talk about its achievement in the scenario of India after independence, thus these Dalits status got improved in a much bigger way? You can answer no. Why? Because the data says the like the conditions of these marginalized people are not very good. We are seeing in terms of the poverty, in terms of hunger, in terms of accessibility to better livelihood, these are not present, okay. And when we talk about the democracy, what does democracy means? Democracy means participation of the people, okay, we know that. But you know the famous quote of B.R. Ambedkar that political democracy will only be ensured if there is social democracy, and social democracy will be ensured when it will be ensured when each and every people, whether it is marginalized, whether it is the poor, whether it is the rich, is equally treated, okay, and they all have the opportunity to participate in the politics, to have a independent decision making, whether they want to open business or not, or the accessibility to finance, all of that, okay. So our constitution was designed in that. But nowadays what we are seeing that there is a coming up of the capitalist economy or the market economy, or we can say the neoliberal economy, okay. And in this neoliberal economy we always want to liberalize the policy in the favor of market, okay. So the biggest concern of this neoliberal economy, like the role of government in ensuring the development, in ensuring the progress of these marginalized section reduces. Okay, and that's why their empowerment is dependent on the market. But you know that market is mostly exploitative in nature, and hence the concerns of the Dalits and the marginalized section will never be addressed if left dependent on the market. That's why state intervention was needed. State intervention was very important, and it was the like job of government to ensure that their empowerment should happen, their participation in the politics should happen. Okay, but with the coming of the neoliberal economy, we are seeing the diversion, okay, from government towards market in deciding the welfare of the people, of the marginalized section. So what we need to do, okay, what we need to do, we have to ensure that the policy that government will make toward the welfare of the vulnerable section should also incorporate the private sector as well. That means not only that government should provide the welfare services, but also ensure that private, whether it is company, whether it is the startup, all of that, okay, they should also provide welfare services to them. Okay, otherwise you can observe that the presence of this marginalized section in the bigger role, whether it is the role of leadership, whether it is the role of the business class, whether it is the role of in the high education or the high government portfolio, it is very very less. Okay, they are mostly in the primary sector, or they are in like very low quality job. Okay, so we need to address, and for that the government needs to incorporate the private sector. Okay, so here we need to understand that the government's step should be taken, and you can understand that new social justice policy be expanded to the private economy, and also they democratize the work classes and the Adivasis concern. And what is the major concern of Adivasi? That their habitat, the ecology should never be disturbed, and also their cultural autonomy must be addressed. And remember, if you left over the Adivasi to the market forces, then exploitation of the ecology, exploitation of the culture will be happen definitely. Okay, so that's the issue that need to be like solved. Okay, and also these marginalized groups should be advanced as the essential component of urbanization, industrial production, and technological innovation as well. Okay, and here we have already told you that state is now deviating from its responsibility because they are delving their responsibility to the market, but market will never solve the problems of these marginalized section. Okay, they need support from the state, from the government. Okay, so hence the new agenda of social justice should be oriented towards leader of the market economy, and they need to be educated so that they can also adopt the welfareist measures, and this will lead to the empowerment, enhancement, and the growth of these marginalized and the vulnerable section. Try to take real life example. Do you see that the Dalits and the marginalized have the bigger presence in terms of their startup, in terms of the political leadership? Okay, in terms of in the top level government position, try to analyze, try to accumulate data, find out, then you will come to the conclusion, yes, that the role of marginalized section is very less here. Okay, so friends, we have the end of this discussion. Hope you understood. And now at the end of the session, we always try to give you the prelims question you have to attempt. Okay, so thank you friends, thank you very much. We will meet again with the next sort of session, and if you are liking our initiative, please do like, share, subscribe. Thank you.